At HarperCollins India, we celebrate the power of storytelling and the journey of bringing words to life. Hear from breakout debut authors Mehak Jamal, Bhavika Govil in conversation with Dharini, associate publisher at HarperCollins India, as they share how they crafted their books and how you can write yours too.
Hi everyone, on World Book Day, I'm so excited to have with me two of our authors, Bhavika Govil and Mehak Jamal. Bhavika and Mehak have both written exceptional books. So I have before me first Bhavika's Hot Water, which has just been released. It is a novel and it tells the story of a single mother and her two children. The family is on the brink. I also have with me Mehak Jamal, who's the author of Loal, Kashmir, which was recently published. This book has 16 true life stories from Kashmir, and it tells of how people love in a land of conflict. Mehak and Bhavika, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I'll start with you, Mehak. So when we read books in Kashmir, typically, they either eulogize the beauty of the land or they offer a quick history or a long history of the cycle of conflicts. What made you approach Kashmir through the lens of love?
Thanks, Dharini. And firstly, happy World Book Day to everybody watching. And thank you for your question. So I grew up in Kashmir, in Srinagar. And so I've been through many of these waves of unrest myself while growing up and while living over there. And in a lot of the narratives which I read from Kashmir or written about Kashmir, I found that the lived experiences of people over there were quite dwindling. And I think it has increased, the writing on that area has increased over the last couple of years. But still, I felt it wasn't enough. So I think that was the reason I wanted to look at the conflict and look at how people live through it and what are their lives like. And of course, they're directly affected by the conflict itself. But the inner lives of the people are running parallel to the conflict. So I wanted to explore that, and that is how Loal Kashmir came to be. And specifically through the lens of love, because I think real life love stories from Kashmir aren't explored enough. And I wanted to do that through my book.
That's really interesting. And Bhavika, moving on to you. So it's interesting that we're talking about these two books because one is a work of fiction and the other is a work of non-fiction. However, I think the thread that unites both of them is the exploration of the idea of love and what it means to both give and receive love. Now, Bhavika, your book is also about family and festering secrets. How did the idea of this novel come to you?
Thank you for the question, Dharini. And I'm really delighted to be here on World Book Day and celebrated with both of you and your books. I suppose before the idea of love or family or festering secrets or any of the themes that we get to know our books are about after we've written them, especially with fiction, this book, Hot Water, came to me solely with one voice, a ringing, clear voice of a 9-year-old girl who is called Meera. And in the room who's pulling that adult's hand and saying, listen to my story, listen to what happened to me. So I listened to what happened to her and got to know her story and the story of her mother and her family and her brother, whom she's very close to and loves and attached to. And in a way, it became a story about love, all the ways in which we withhold it, all the ways in which we share it.
I love the fact that you mentioned Meera's voice because for me, that is one of my favorite parts of the novel. If I had to pick a favorite, which is really hard, but I'm glad you mentioned that. When you were writing the book, obviously there must have been many moments when you felt unsure because that happens to anyone working on a project. Today, as a published writer, if you could go back in time and talk to your younger writing self, the person who was still working on the early drafts of Hot Water, what advice would you offer her?
This is a really difficult and interesting question. I do believe that you have to go through the process and the journey to become the person you are, or for a book or story to become the way it is. So I'm not sure, even though I have all the secrets to what has made this book come about and all the structural secrets, that I'd want to share that with my younger writer self, because I think that exploration of the many drafts was important for this book to become what it was, and for me to change as well as a writer. Yet, I will just console myself that at the end of this process, I'll look at the book and hopefully no one will be able to tell which paragraphs came on the slow writing days, which ones came easily and flowed like a river. And those days in which it feels like pulling teeth or it doesn't come as naturally and you have to sort of look deeper and harder, those are just as important as the ones in which the voices just flow effortlessly.
I love that response. Mehak, you are a filmmaker by profession, and your films have won a great deal of acclaim. When I received your manuscript, I remember one of the first thoughts that came to me was that this is a highly cinematic book. There were large passages that almost felt like they were unspooling on a cinema screen. In fact, there's one part I vividly recall where there is a woman and she's in a hospital and she's running towards her fiance, who's a doctor. And the entire scene seems to unspool in slow motion. As a filmmaker, has the art and craft of cinema dictated your own writing process?
So, yeah, I think where my filmmaking really helped me while writing the book was to create these visuals, because I'm also a screenwriter. So screenwriting is really about creating visuals. So while you're reading something, you can really visualize it in front of your eyes. And also screenwriting, like a script is a blueprint of a film. Book isn't. The book is the final thing that you're writing. But I did feel that, while searching for my prose voice, a lot of my screenwriting voice was also trickling into the book. And I actually didn't mind it at all, because I felt that even while I was interviewing people, my questions kind of found their way to asking them more about, for example, like what were they wearing, or what was that person looking like, or could they visualize that whole space around them? So I felt my questions going over there. And so inadvertently, a lot of those scenes seem very, I don't know, well composed. And also going back to to that portion that you mentioned about that girl running, I think she herself described herself as a heroine in a Sanjay Leela Bhansali film, right? Like, that scene from Devdas when Paro is running through the Haveli in the end. So she described herself with that. So, that is how I chose to describe the scene in the story itself. So yeah, I feel like even though I struggle with finding my prose voice while writing my book, in a lot of places it really helped me, and I'm glad that happened.
And I'm also very glad you spoke about, the questions that you asked those you were interviewing, like, what they were wearing. But I imagine some of the questions might have been trickier because at the end of the day, this is a book that chronicles love stories. And these are intimate stories. These are stories that people are often hesitant to talk about. How did you earn the confidence of those you were interviewing for this book? And how do they come to reveal these really intimate details of their life to you? How hard was it?
So this is something I was surprised by, and I think it continues to surprise me how much people chose to open up to me. There are a few people who I knew, but I think the majority of the people I spoke to, I didn't know at all. And also because I was asking about their love lives, right? Which is something which not a lot of people are comfortable talking about. And especially in Kashmir, which is a conservative society. So if you're not betrothed to somebody, you wouldn't really want to speak about somebody you're dating. I think one thing was that when I put out the project call for Loal Kashmir, it had a Google form and they could just fill in all their details and then I would contact them. So I had one option over there, one point where I asked them if they would want to be anonymous. So they could just answer yes or no. So I think, of course, the majority of them did say yes, that they want to be anonymous. I feel like that helped them open up more because they felt like maybe their identity wouldn't be out in the world, but their story will. So I think that give them some sort of agency while they were talking to me. Secondly, while speaking to them, I just, there was one line which a lot of them repeated, which was, nobody asked us about this part of our lives. People want to know everything which is happening outside of us because the Kashmir conflict, is in the news and it is in the forefront, and rightly so. And the world should know what is happening in Kashmir. But at the same time, they wanted the world to also know that how they live through the unrest, through the conflict, and what are their inner lives like. And I think that really that made them open up more to me during the conversations. And also, over time, I kept wondering whether it has something to do with me being a woman, whether they felt more comfortable with me. I haven't really found an answer to that question itself, but this is really how it all came to be for me.
It's interesting that you bring up the point of gender and whether, that elicits a degree of comfort. And I don't think there's an easy answer to that. Bhavika, when you wrote Hot Water, after reading the novel, I mean, the title makes perfect sense. But how did the title come to you? And was it the title that came first or the book?
I wish I could say it was the title. The book came 5 years ago. The title came about 10 months ago in a series of desperations, having to come up with a title before the book went to publication. So it has gone through several names and several drafts. At first, it was called The Silent Treatment, which is what I thought the book was about. At some point, it was titled The Book of Ma, who is a character in the story. And it took a long time to come up with one word or a couple of words that can encapsulate all the themes in one novel. I found it really hard to be able to find a connecting thread between all the many things I'm talking about, childhood and families and these festering secrets that you mentioned. And ultimately, I realized I drew up a document of about 150 titles, just freewheeling, brainstorming, thinking of anything that might work. And eventually, all the titles that I was noting down off the top of my mind, they ended up being around fluidity and swimming pools and water, because that is an important setting and an important element in the novel, the ways in which these characters go through the course of their life and their relationships. And eventually, just putting two words together, looking at it from afar and saying hot water, that's it. This is a story about a family in hot water, in troubled waters. And yeah, I just had to find sort of that core word that could encapsulate all those different strands.
That makes sense. And, the cover sort of blends so well with the title. I mean, it really sings. How did this cover come to you, Bhavika? Or how did it happen? What was the process like?
The process was so wonderful and simple. I wrote a book and then I left it in the hands of the designer. And Bonita Vashimre is the designer of this cover, and in collaboration, of course, with the editors. And she read the book and came up with this beautiful cover that I've been receiving compliments on. And I just keep saying I've lucked out with the designer. I think what she's done really particularly well is that, of course, it's a cover that denotes the setting that a lot of the pivotal scenes of this novel are based in. But at the same time, when you look at it, it appears a novel full of both light and dark. There is this levity of sunshine and the swimming pool and bright waters. But the closer you look, there are also undercurrents and darknesses and depths that are floating, sort of swimming underneath the surface. And I was very intrigued by that. And I hope that that intrigues a reader at the bookshop as well to know what that depth might represent.
No, I
Thank you.
agree with you because, well, there is this quality of summer to the cover. If one looks at it for a bit, there's this lurking terror, almost a stillness, right? You have this float and there's nobody. And what's happening? That's the first question that comes to mind. It's a cover that invites you to read the book. But I'd say that even about Mehak's cover, Loal, Kashmir. Mehak, tell us about the journey of this cover, how this cover came into being. It's beautiful. It's an illustration and it conveys terror and conflict, but it also has the softness to it. Tell us how this happened.
So yeah, the cover is made by a Kashmiri artist and architect called Basita Shah. Basita was my junior in school, actually. And so, we've known each other since childhood. And while I was discussing the cover with the art department at HarperCollins, I was very sure that I wanted a Kashmiri woman to make the cover. And I asked them to look for artists who were the same. And I think both for me and for them, Basita's work really, jumped out at us and spoke to us. And we reached out to her, and I think because she also knew me, though I don't think she had done a book cover before, but because she knew me, she was eager to jump on, and I'm glad that she did. I didn't really have many ideas about the cover myself. I really wanted her to bring, what she wanted to the book. I think there are a few iterations which I gave her, but they did feel a little maybe they lacked depth in a certain way. And then she just sent me a picture of a boy running amongst chaos with a bouquet in his hand, and I think it really summarized everything in the book. So even from here you might not be able to see it, but if you Google the book cover, you will see that he's running through this very desolate street, and it seems like there's something which has happened in this place. There are stones on the floor, there are like people have left behind a shoe or something, and there's like smoke billowing in the background. So there is chaos around him. There is maybe a protest which he's getting out of because he wants to go meet his beloved. And if you see the other side of the book, actually, it has another illustration, which is calmer and kind of depicts a place maybe in an area of Srinagar, like a very old-timey shop, which is, kind of, it serves tea, but it's also like an STD shop. It's like everything in one. And this girl is writing a letter. So this came to me because, during 2019, when the abrogation of Article 370 and 35A happened, which is also what a major chunk of the book towards the end is based on, that time, and especially how lovers kind of kept in touch and, communicated with each other. And I kept hearing a lot of stories of people, because there were no phones working, there was no internet, and, communication was quite impossible. And even traveling within Kashmir was very erratic, because, there were concertina wiring and checkposts everywhere. So a lot of people tended to write letters to each other and leave them at spots where they knew that somebody is going to be. So with shopkeepers or with drivers or anybody who they knew they could trust. So for me, what I felt was that this guy is obviously going to meet his beloved, but she might have to leave very soon and she has no way of telling him. So she's writing a letter to leave with the shopkeeper. So at least he gets to know that she was there. So it's really two sides of the same story, and that is really how it came to be.
And your book really does convey both sides of the conflict. There is this softness, this gentleness to it, and yet there is also this deep sense of uncertainty and even fear that lurks, as part of the subtext. Now, there is a question that I did wish to ask both of you, and it involves the concerns regarding piracy. piracy tends to devalue a lot of the time investment and the creative investment that the writer puts in while creating this mammoth book. What message would you like to share with our readers on World Book Day about supporting creative work? Would you like to go first, Mehak, and then I'll ask Bhavika?
Sure. So I think every book takes a long time to conceive and write and put out into the world. And even though there might be one person writing it, but there's a whole barrage of people around them who help them put that work out into the world. And of course, I would consider book writing as art, right? And I feel like art is something in the world which people are very comfortable with, uh, getting for free. And I think which is very evident from, even if you go to see, the recent trend of with AI creating, Ghibli art, which is studio, which is based on really, painstakingly drawing animation. For many years, they create different pieces of work in films, and each film takes years to complete. And for now people to have an avenue to create their own pictures and convert them into that art, and the ethicality, which is the whole conversation around that has come up. I think that's a very good example of looking at this subject of piracy, of taking somebody's art and not giving them the due. So I think at any point, if you think about piracy within books as well, I think if a reader thinks about their own work, if they had written something and then for it to be available with a click to be downloaded, and them to never see maybe a share of that money ever in their life, I think that would really give you the perspective of what it means. And yeah, I think it's really as simple as that. I don't think there's any way to complicate the issue.
Bhavika, would you have any thoughts on this?
Well, Mehak has said it perfectly, but I just want to echo it and say that books do take a lot of time, love. Speaking of love, it's a complete act of love and perseverance to make. And even in the case of, say, Mehak's book, Loal, Kashmir, that's the result of so many conversations of real people and their stories. And buying a book is maybe cheaper than buying a coffee. I really think it's something that is an experience in itself, purchasing a book, walking into a bookstore, buying it, the interaction and the conversation. And it's a piece of art that you get to keep in your home forever, in your living room bookshelf forever. And you must support artists to continue doing what they're doing, just talking about the things that bother us all or are all on all of our minds, but bringing them to light.
I couldn't agree more. Mehak, what advice would you like to offer anybody who is working on their very first book?
I would say keep it simple, even if that sounds very simplistic, but I would say keep it simple. And I think there is always this fear that whatever you want to say has already been told. But I feel like in any story that you want to say, there is a perspective that only you can bring. And I really believe that. And I think you should keep that in the back of your mind when you're writing your first book.
That's really sound advice. And Bhavika, I know you conduct writing workshops, so maybe this will be easy to answer or maybe not. But what would you like to tell anyone who's thinking about becoming a writer? What advice would you like to offer them?
I do have a lot of conversations about the fears that we writers have, especially when we're starting out, but I'm sure at any stage. And the topic of publication comes up a lot. And what I would advise, and it may seem contradictory, it probably is, but you have to be two selves at once. One who believes utterly confidently that your book is going to get published if you so want it to be, who is the sole sort of champion of it, who works on it day in and day out and wants to make it see the light of day. And at the same time, you need to be extremely okay with the fact that this, whatever you put down first, is going to be the first coat of paint, the first mound of clay. It's art. It's something that's going to take time and patience to be shaped into. It may require a lot of drafts, layers, it may require reshaping or remodeling. And not to be uncomfortable with that process of having to go over something again and again, and also being patient with the publication journey. I think that is what I would like to advise, to enjoy the time in creating, and at the same time have that tiny bit of confidence that, yeah, of course, this is going to happen.
I mean, that's wonderful advice coming from you. And I think what you mentioned also about writing being so much about rewriting and that perseverance and that willingness to work on the sentence again and again and the paragraph again and again. I think that's also so vital, while also holding the faith that yes, this will get published, right? It asks for a lot. I wanted to ask you, Bhavika, because you had mentioned Mira's voice in the beginning. How did you find that voice? Because it's this voice that's full of vulnerability and innocence. And as a reader, my first instinct is to protect her. And yet I feel unable to protect Mira, which makes the novel doubly devastating. How did this voice come to you? And was it hard working with multiple voices at once? Because the novel does hold many voices. Was it hard switching?
Thank you for the question, and of course for helping me bring those voices and shine them to light. Mira's voice was one of the easier voices for me. Once I had figured out the very age I want to situate her in, the time period, the words just came to me because um, I suppose I have a lot of nieces and nephews around me, so I've never really been too far away from the point of childhood or from a child's perspective. Anytime I have, I've been pulled down and made to see the world in an entirely new light. And I think I might give credit to those voices in my real life that have always sort of filtered into my own mind and then my creative work. And then once I figured out what Mira's voice will be like, it was an utter joy to see the world through her eyes. She's 9, everything is new to her, everything is interesting, every every word is an opportunity to find and imbue new meaning into. Every relationship can be compared to apples and oranges and pomegranates and mangoes hanging on the tree. So it would be a period of brief respite for me as an adult to step into her world, and for the moment of writing the book, um, um, see the world through Mira's innocent yet rather clever eyes. It was hard sometimes to be Mira and to be me, and to be the person who knows the events that are going to occur to her, and at the same time be unaware, be the character who's entering a room not knowing what's going to unfold, much like all of us in our real lives. So that kind of knowledge and state of suspension between being the author and being a character was difficult and um, challenging at times, but I had to sort of zone in even deeper into the story and forget that it was me who was telling it. And as for the difficulty or the experience of writing the other two characters, so the other two characters are her 14-year-old brother Ashu and her very unconventional and bold Ma. I wrote their voices all in a chunk. So Mira first, then Ma, then Ashu. So when I was writing these stories, for those moments, I felt like I'm just writing the story, one book or 3 books altogether. And I was aware in my peripheral vision that there are these other 2 characters that exist, but I was only seeing the world and entering their inner landscape and their emotional landscape. So it wasn't challenging at that time to enter those voices. To weave them together, however, and to to be able to achieve a balance of switching between the stories of Ma and Mira and Ashu, that was a little bit disorienting sometimes. And yet an experience I really enjoyed, because a family is a unit of many members, yet we forget the individuality that exists within and the individual experiences that may be occurring in the same room and the sort of storms that may be going on inside. So,
I found that really interesting, the way you built the book, part by part, and then sort of wove it all together. It reads seamlessly, though. It doesn't feel like you worked on each individually. It's a beautiful collage. Mehak, when you wrote Loal Kashmir, if I don't know if you had a definite reader in mind when you wrote it, but for the reader who isn't from Kashmir, what would you like them to take away about Kashmir after reading your book?
So since the book has been out for a few months now, and people do write to me who have been reading the book, and a lot of people who are not from Kashmir reading the book. So I've had a lot of different reactions and responses to it. But I think what one person said succinctly puts it is that people who are not from Kashmir, who have not been to Kashmir, often have a lot of opinions about the place and the people, how, for the betterment of them and, what is good for them, without really understanding the history of the land, the context of the conflict, and what really the Kashmiri people are trying to say for such a long time. And I think that person got it, that, I think when it comes to Kashmir, Kashmiri people are the ones who should be making decisions, and their voices need to be heard. And even if, a person who's not from there reads the book and they take away one new thing that they learned about it, I would be very, very happy. Because that people live regular, normal lives and have desires and dreams and needs is something which is not showcased enough in our, popular media or news when it comes to Kashmir. And I was very frustrated about that. And I think that was one of the main reasons I wanted to write this book. And really, it was very cathartic for me to get this out. And especially, I think, after when 2019 happened, and with the communication blockade over there, when there were really no voices coming out of Kashmir from civilians or journalists, really, it was a big clamp down on what the ground reality of the place. And I think that really created this need and fire within me to echo the voices of what I was hearing on my side, and put it out into the world for more people to read and listen to and engage with, and really create empathy and to create allies. And I think that's what I really want people to take away from the book.
And my own feeling is that endeavor has been successful. Bhavika and Mehak, I'm now going to play a game with you. And I'm going to mention a word, and I want each of you to tell me the first word that comes to your mind when I mention what I do. So we can go Mehak and Bhavika. Does that work?
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So what's the first word that comes to your mind when I mention family?
Home.
Bhavika?
safety. Safety.
Writing. Mehak?
Books.
Perseverance.
Perseverance, yeah. Summer. Mehak?
Sweating.
Freedom.
HarperCollins.
Home again.
Sailboat.
And finally, I had to end with this, love.
Say Loal for me.
Listening.
I love that. I love all the responses. Thank you, Bhavika and Mehak, for being part of this conversation and for offering the responses that you did. I feel like I learn something new about you and your books each time we talk. And it's a real privilege to hear both of you in conversation about two very special debut novels and books of nonfiction. So thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Dharini, and thank you, Mehak. I'm really excited about Loal Kashmir.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dharini, for all the questions, and thank you, Bhavika, for like sharing. I'm very happy to share this platform with you, and all the best
Yeah.
for your upcoming book release. And
Thank you.
looking forward to reading Hot Water.